Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on when you're watching this video. Hope you're all, again, staying safe. Welcome to our next chapter, the auxiliary chapter, what chapter is this? Chapter 6. This is where we're going to cover bass drum, crash cymbal, suspended cymbal, tambourine, triangle, wood block, tempo blocks, tam-tams, all kinds of things, and we get to dive deep into each one because I've got you your undivided attention. Again, our exam will be, hopefully I'm getting this the right height. Is that right? I'm going to raise it up a little bit. Okay. Hopefully that's a better height. I don't know. You'll figure it out, and I'll edit this if it doesn't look good afterward. Anyway, we're looking at our chapter test, which would be next Friday. Same system we had with the last one. I'm in the middle of grading those, and I'll have those up on D2L. I got your first test, your playing tests, both of them up, and I still have yet to grade the last two tests, written tests, and I'll get those graded. And don't worry, I don't know if you guys can access the immediately graded tests from the last one, but everybody got a 0% because all of the answers were just nonsense. I didn't put the answers in, so you couldn't have possibly gotten the correct answers, but I don't believe it is on set to auto grade. Hopefully it was not. The only difference we're going to do going forward is that at the end of each video, I'm going to ask you a series of 3 questions. You will then put these answers to the 3 questions up on the discussion board, and I believe I will have it set up. I think it's set up. It'll be set up today, where you won't be able to see other people's responses until you actually put yours in. So the point is, I want to make sure you're getting the big points, and I want to make sure that you're somewhat retaining the information and we're all working together. One of the weird things, and my kids are experiencing this with their teachers, and it seems to be a worldwide phenomenon, is the lack of cohesiveness. I feel that I'm throwing this stuff out there, and I have no idea if anything is being listened to, being watched, and so as teachers, we want to, geez, am I reaching my students? So I'm going to give you guys more stuff to do to make sure that I'm reaching you. So I'm trying to do that in a way that's not too much stuff, but enough that you actually are seeing the information and we're connecting in some sort of meaningful way. So again, if there's any issues, please let me know. We can see if we can fix it, we can adjust it, do what we need to do to make it work. So let's dive in. Today we're going to do crash cymbals, and then we'll be adding more videos as we go throughout the rest of the week of all the other instruments. I was going to do bass drum, but Dr. Krause is using the band room. This place is busy. There's like 5 teachers here. We're all self-isolating. Of course, we're all on our own, but we're actually all working here. So just for you, all for you. Anyway, all right, so crash cymbals. These are crash cymbals. So as far as picking cymbals, what we want to look at when we buy a crash cymbal, there are 2 main companies that we like to talk about. One is Sabian, S-A-B-I-A-N, Sabian. And the other company is Zildjian, Z-I-L-D-J-I-A-N. These companies are important in that, going back to Zildjian, Zildjian is, I believe, the oldest company on the planet. They have their roots consistently going back to like 500 years. They're an amazingly old company. And Zildjian started in Turkey. I believe Turkey somewhere, either there, somewhere in the Middle East, Turkey, Istanbul, or Constantinople, which of course they're the same thing. Do you know that They Might Be Giants tune? Istanbul, not Constantinople, do-do-do-do. It's a really cool tune. Check it out. Anyway, Zildjian, the name Zildjian means, Zil means symbol, and Jian means sun, so symbol sun. So it's like it's the family name. The name of the family is Zildjian, and they are named after making cymbals. And so they've been around for a long time. They moved to the United States. They set up shop around Boston, and then about 20 years ago. So anyway, those cymbals were the best cymbals on the planet. They had a secret formula that only they knew, no one else knew, only like 2 or 3 people in the company knew, the Zildjians knew. And so their cymbals sounded unique and sounded better than anybody else's. About 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, the 2 sons had an argument, and one of them split off. One of the Zildjians split off, and he ended up going to Toronto, and he started Sabian. So Sabian is actually owned by a Zildjian. So you have the Zildjian cymbal and the Sabian cymbal company, still run by the same family. So obviously they knew the formula. They had the same idea. So the cymbals are very similar. They sound almost identical to each other, and so they're both good quality. About 10 years ago, somehow the cat got out of the bag, and a bunch of cymbal companies kind of erupted out of nowhere. And so you now have a bunch of really credible companies. UFIP is one of them, Bosphorus, Dream. There's actually a company called Constantinople. And there's many others, and they're all making gorgeous, wonderful cymbals. So those cymbals are fine, but the 2 main companies that we think about for educational cymbals are either Sabian or Zildjian. Those are the 2 main companies. And so if you're going to buy a cymbal, start with those 2. The other ones are fine, but you're going to have a hard time finding them, and they really don't make educational cymbals. Most of those companies, they really specialize in drum set cymbals versus band or orchestra cymbals. When we look at buying a pair of cymbals, there are weights, there are heavinesses to the cymbals that we want to look at. So there are 3 descriptions of the weights that are historically what we've done, and they all kind of refer to them similarly. So the lightest cymbal is the French cymbal, the medium cymbal is Viennese, and the heaviest cymbal is Germanic. All right, so lightest is French, medium is Viennese, and heaviest is Germanic. So the sounds are associated with those lightnesses. So a French cymbal, the lightest cymbal, is going to give me a thin sound, a very French-like sound. The medium cymbal, Viennese, from Vienna, obviously, gives us kind of a moderate sound, moderately dark, and Germanic gives me a dark sound, okay? So I have the cymbal, these are the plate from the school, these are Sabian Viennese cymbals, and these are mine, these are Sabian Germanic cymbals, okay? These are heavier than these. I'm assuming that the sound of these things is going to be just awful coming through the speaker because of just how loud these are. So you're not going to really hear a difference. I might play them, but basically those are the weights you want to get. When you're buying them for your band, you want to buy the Viennese cymbals. The Viennese cymbals are easier to play, and they're going to be big enough. French cymbals are really easy to play, but you can't get loud. If you're doing anything big, if your ensemble is anything larger than 30 or 40 players, they're not going to keep up with the volume that you need. So the Viennese are still easy to play, but they create a big sound, nice dark sound. Germanics are the hardest to play. They can be clunky at times, and so they're difficult to play, and you can't do it. It's hard to play really small finesse-based things with it. I use these cymbals. These are my cymbals, the Germanics. And I use them with the Christmas at the Cathedral gig that I do every year. And it's a small chamber orchestra in the cathedral. And I always struggle to get the sounds that I want with these because they're just too big for that setting. I really should have smaller cymbals for that, but I just don't own any. So that's something that you have to kind of think about. So again, the Viennese cymbals are what you want to get. As far as sizes, you want to get an 18-inch cymbal to start off with. That's your generic cymbal size, an 18-inch. So if you're going to buy cymbals, an 18-inch Viennese cymbal is what you want. If you want something smaller, go to a 16. If you want something bigger, go to a 19 or a 20. All right, but you want to start with your 18-inch, kind of like with our snare drum, starting with that 5.5 by 14, and then you can vary out from there. So if you already have a really nice set of 18s, then maybe go with, depends on what you're playing. If you're playing a lot of smaller things, then maybe go slightly smaller cymbals. If you're playing bigger things, go with bigger cymbals. When we get to marching band, you'll see that we have all kinds of different cymbal sizes that we kind of use with marching band, but we don't really use all that many different sizes inside. We do vary them, and like I said, 18 is the average, and then we go bigger or smaller. So again, if you're going to buy a pair of cymbals for your band, buy the 18-inch Viennese, either Sabian or Zildjian. Those cymbals are the best. The next most popular cymbal brand is Paiste, P-A-I-S-T-E, and they're good. They have a different sound, because they're made differently, but typically we opt for one of these two cymbals. All right, so let's talk about straps. All your crash cymbals, you need to have straps on them. These are leather. When you buy cymbals, when we bought these cymbals here, they came with nylon straps. They're just awful. I thought, oh, they're free, we'll use them. They lasted like a week. They were really, really, really bad. So you want to get the leather straps to use. The way we tie them, if you look on your book on page 226, there is a diagram on how to tie your cymbal straps. This is something that you need to learn to do. You should ideally, hopefully, have your students learn to do it. I should make all the cymbal players in marching band learn it, but I'm a little lazy and I just do it for them myself. But this is what the knot looks like. Okay, very important that you tie it this way. Now this one is actually coming a little loose, so I'm going to tighten it a little bit. You just tighten them, you just pull on the straps, and that tightens it up. Okay, it's a square knot. I imagine if you're in Boy Scouts, you probably have seen that before. These straps, they're split into 4 little arms once they go through your cymbal, and then you tie them this way. You don't want to just tie a random knot. One of the main reasons we tie it this way is so when I suspend it, it's going to be fairly straight. Okay, obviously this isn't 100% straight, but if I just have a stupid old weird knot underneath there, it's going to be at a weird angle. So we want to kind of make that. How long this is, it really doesn't matter a whole lot inside because we're not going to be putting our hands in the strap, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Just make sure it's long enough. This is plenty long. It's probably a little on the long side, but it works for me. So I think the schools is even longer, their strap. It doesn't really matter as long as it's long enough to grab onto. Okay? Okay. Oh, let's talk about. We'll talk about that later. Just anyway. Right. How to play these inside? First of all, we don't put our hands through the straps like we do in marching band. We don't do that. The reason we don't do this is really designed for. I have to play a parade for an hour or two, and I have to hold on to the cymbals. And so when I do this, I can really hold on to my cymbals forever, right? There's no, other than just the weight of the cymbal in my arm, there's no work that I have to do to keep the cymbal in my hand. So this is really great if I have to hold on to it for a long time. The problem is my hand is all over the instrument. I'm muffling the instrument, all right? And so this is going to give me a really choked, nasty sound. Okay, I'm going to play you worst possible scenario sound. All right, I'm going to put my hands on both cymbals. Okay, and I'm going to play. Hopefully, you can hear it through the recording. So this is with my hands all over the cymbals. All right, now I'm going to play it with my hands not on the cymbals. can hear the difference. Huge, huge difference in the sound. So that's why we don't want to put our hand through the cymbals. Okay, we don't want to put them through here. And with that, we also don't want those pads. Sometimes in marching band we have big pads here, which are great because they protect your hands when you're holding it for long periods of time. But we don't need that. All right. Inside, we don't hold these very long. We hold them just as long as we have to play, and then we put them down in our strap. I'm putting them down on a chair. I'd put it on the stand, but the stand is, again, is in the band room, which I don't have access to, so I'm putting it on the chair. But you got to have a stand someplace to put your cymbal. It's a cradle, they call it. So when we grab the cymbal, hopefully you can see this. I'm going to grab underneath here with my fingers. My thumb's going to come on top, and then I'm going to hold it. All right, the goal is I'm touching the cymbal very little. Now my knuckles right now are on the cymbal because I'm holding it upside down. Okay, but if I'm doing a good job, when I crash, really that's it. The only thing touching it will be my index finger. Okay, when I crash it, and then I can move my hand so that I'm not touching the cymbal. But at most, my knuckles, about 2 or 3 knuckles, are going to touch the cymbal when I'm playing. I'd like it to not, but that's as hard as I can hold on to it. I had a teacher one time who was adamant that I needed to squeeze this so hard that the entire weight of the cymbals was right on my index finger. And then they said, it's going to turn blue, it's going to hurt, but you have no choice. You have to do it. And I think that's a little severe. So, and I can't hold this hard that long. I sweat too much and it slips. And so I hold like this. I have my knuckles on the cymbal, and it's okay. So my right hand, I'm holding it like this. Left hand, same deal. Okay, so our hands are not going through the straps. All right, so oftentimes when I play crash cymbals, I think about one instrument and I know which one it is. One instrument is my right hand cymbal, one instrument is my left hand cymbal. Okay, just so happens with this set, on my right hand cymbal, the hand hammered is on the outside, and on the left hand cymbal, the word hand hammering is on the inside. Hand hammering just means somebody went through with a ball peen hammer and put random notes, random spots all over the cymbals to give the sound a little more complex of a tone. But I just know that it just happens with these cymbals, and it's not very common to have this. Hand hammers on the inside here, on the outside here, and I line them up, and that's how I want to play. If you don't have writing like this, which most cymbals do not, for instance, these are the same on the inside as they are on the outside. In other words, they're the same. So what you can do with these is you can take a piece of pencil. You can find out where they sound the best, and we'll talk about that in a second. And you can take a pencil, and you can write with pencil on the outside cymbal an arrow here, pointing up, and on the inside cymbal an arrow pointing up, again, matching, and then you can line them up when you're playing. So how do we know where the cymbals sound the best, and why does it matter? Each of these cymbals, again, these are all hand hammered. All these are kind of at least hand finished. And so there's inconsistencies with the construction and the weight of the cymbal. And so oftentimes, as you're playing, the heaviest part of the cymbal is going to find its way down. Okay? So if I start like this cymbal wants to rotate back down to that. And so it stays here when I play it. All right? So I know that this is the lightest part of the cymbal, this is the heaviest part of the cymbal. Same thing in my left hand. Okay? I know that, I don't know, again, I'm hoping that they did that purposefully, but it seems like this works really well. And also the plates line up well with this. They just sound better, more consistent, and I feel like I'm able to get a more consistent sound when we do this. All right. Crashing, how we want to play. So when I think about crashing, I like to practice away from the cymbals initially. So I'm going to have you do this with me. This is part of the interactive aspect of this video. I want you to take your left hand, and when I say left hand, actually use your left hand, just for sake of argument. Left hand, and I want you to hold it out here, not completely horizontal, but not vertical, right? So it's kind of flat-ish, all right? I'm just holding it out. I'm going to take my right hand, and I'm going to drop my arm, and I'm going to clap, and then I'm going to slide through. So you drop, and you slide through. So it's a sloppy clap, and then I'm sliding through. Okay, so I'm really dropping. I'm not doing anything with right there with my left hand. I'm just dropping my right hand, sliding through. Okay, so this is the thought process when I'm playing crash cymbals. Now, take it to the next level, my right hand is doing this kind of a circular motion, dropping, sliding through, dropping, sliding through. I'm going to have my left hand do the opposite motion. So if this is going in this kind of a circle, this is going to go in this kind of a circle. And so I get this. And again, I'm really thinking about dropping. I'm not bringing this hand up. I'm definitely not doing this. It's just a dropping and a circle. Now this circle is important in that the best sound I'm going to get is when both plates are moving in a relaxed motion. If one of them is just static and the other one comes at it and smacks it, I'm going to get a real nasty tone. But if they're both flexible and moving, I'm going to get a better tone. Okay, so we have these two circles that I'm clapping on. Okay, so then I take the cymbals, put them in my hand, and I'm going to do the same thing. Exactly the same thing. One hand down, one hand up. I'm going to start by just dropping, and I'm going to slide. It doesn't sound good, but I'm getting the idea of relaxed dropping, very relaxed, dropping through, and then sliding out from the cymbal. I'm not worried about where they're hitting each other. I'm not worried about doing a flam. I'm just dropping it. Now I'm going to do a circle. Again, that's not the sound we want, but it's working there. Now that I have that, now I want to do it at real time. Okay, what does that mean? I'm just going to do it faster. Same motion, but I'm going to do it faster. Okay? Now, you'll notice, probably, that I'm hitting with a flam. Remember what a flam is from snare drum? If you don't, look it up. I'm not going to tell you what it is, because we need that for the final exam. If I'm doing a flam, I'm probably hitting, for me anyway, I'm hitting the top of my cymbal together slightly before the bottom hits. All right, so the top is hitting slightly before the bottom hits, and I'm not hitting with my edges completely together. I'm hitting usually with this either higher or lower. All right, so if I do it higher, I'm going to do now lower. Either is fine, okay? So I typically hit the top first and then the bottom. Now some people will hit the bottom first and then the top. I do that sometimes, but I typically will hit the top first and then slide on through to the bottom. Okay, and again, I'm staying relaxed, and it's the same motion, right? The circular motion, okay? And it really, that's the best sound we're going to get. Now, a couple of things that you want to make sure you don't do, all right? So a lot of times you see, especially, we call it monkey playing, monkey drums, and you see this kind of look. Now, the problem with that, in a couple of reasons. One, I have two things moving. A lot, so they're moving quite a bit. So this is a moving target. It's a lot harder to hit a moving target than it is one that's not moving that much. So the more I move this hand, the harder it is for me to be consistent with this hand. Or harder it is for me to actually find the right spot to hit. And I want to be consistent. All right? I don't want to crash in different times. I want the same tone as much as possible. Okay? So if I don't move this that much, the bottom hand, it's going to sound a lot better, okay? As opposed to me moving it a lot, I'm going to get all kinds of different sounds out of it, which I don't want. I have a feeling these cymbals sound just awful through this video, but it's fun. We'll just leave it and we can deal with it, right? Yeah, the other thing is we don't want to hit all the edges at the same time. We want to really avoid kind of the opposite of the moving everything around and trying to hit all the edges really perfectly every time, because what will happen is that we will get an air pocket that will develop inside the cymbals, and we'll get an awful, terrible kind of negative tone. So I'm going to try to create it here. So if we get an air pocket, that wasn't very good. There you go. You hear that? That's a perfect one. And what happens is I get an air pocket inside of it, which forces the cymbals away from each other. Doesn't allow me to actually hit the cymbals together. And so I can't get a crash. And so that's one of the reasons why we want to hit one side or the other slightly off, either below or above, so that we can allow the air to escape. Okay? Versus, okay, every once in a while you'll hear your players crash cymbals. You'll hear them playing, and they'll get this terrible, like, why was there no sound? Or they get a whoo sound, and that is from the air pocket that develops in there. Okay, and it happens. You just have to be consistent. You have to know exactly where your cymbals are to not get that. Okay. All right. So when we want the note to ring a long time, we don't want this. We don't want what we call, hey mom, all right? We want, because when we do this, now my hands are all over the cymbals, which we do not want, all right? So the more our hands are on the cymbals, the worse they're going to sound, okay? The sound comes out of these cymbals from every direction. There's really no direction. So aiming the cymbals at the audience doesn't help. It's not going to make it any louder. It's not going to make it any better. It's just going to look cooler, if you want to think about that. Marching bands do this a lot because their cymbal line is mostly a visual aspect more than it is an aural aspect, right? So they polish their cymbals up, they crash them, and they do all kinds of cool things because it looks cool. This doesn't sound any better, and in fact it sounds worse than if I don't do it. Okay? Now if you have 5 or 6 or 7 cymbal players, it doesn't matter what they do because they're going to have a big sound regardless. Okay? So you can go ahead and hold it up and it's all fine and good. But if you're playing in your concert band or your orchestra, you do not want to do the look ma. That's not going to make it any louder. So to make your sound resonate, we want to do the opposite. We want to get our hands off the cymbals. And so what I'm going to do, and you've probably seen me do this accidentally so far, is I'm going to hit the cymbals, and then if I want both of them to ring, I'm going to do this and create 2 suspended cymbals that I'm not touching at all. Okay? I'll do that again. They're going to ring a lot longer and a lot fuller, more fully, when they're suspended like this without me touching it. Again, if I'm holding them like this, if they're upside down, they're all over my hands, they're not going to ring as long. Let's see if you can hear a difference. So this is a good crash and then a bad crash. Good crash. And a bad crash. Hopefully you can hear the difference, how nasal they become when you do this, because my hands are all over the back of it. Okay? So that's how you make them resonate. If I want the notes to be short, we never, ever, ever, I'm going to say this again, never, ever, ever do this. Regardless of how short the notes are, this is never a good sound, unless it says in the music, smash, crash. And this is sometimes a special effect we do in marching band, but almost never, ever, ever do we do it in band. I think I've not once seen it in band, and I've never, ever seen it in orchestra. Okay? It's not a sound that we like because it sounds awful. All right? That's not a sound we want. So, when I want a short note, I want to do a full note, and then I'm going to muffle it. And I typically muffle it in my gut. You can muffle it in here, you can muffle it in your chest, you can muffle it in your armpits, whatever's comfortable for you. Okay, I typically will put it right in my gut. So when I crash, I'm going to bring it right into my stomach to muffle it. Now you do have to be careful if you're muffling a lot. You can pinch yourself in the stomach, especially if you're not wearing a tux, if you're wearing like a t-shirt or something like that, and you're crashing a lot, bringing it into your stomach, you can pinch yourself and it can hurt quite a bit. So you do have to be careful when you're pulling it in. That's why I kind of have them a little separated when I pull it into my stomach. Okay, I'm not going to be kind of pulling them together, because the moment they're together, there's a chance I get to pinch myself, and you have to be careful. All right, so the shortest notes still need to be big notes, and I'm muffling it. There's no reason, zero reasons to play a note shorter than that, all right? The hall is going to ring a lot longer. Every member of the band is going to play at least that long, even if it's the last note of the piece. Regardless of how short that note needs to be, there's no reason to play it that short. Right? That's too short, and it's a gross, awful, terrible sound. Okay? It's just not, it's nothing that you want to do. So, and the reason I keep talking about that is I see that a lot. I see that every year. I've seen it for years and years and years and years, and it's a common mistake that people have because they're not really listening to their tone. We talked about tone early on in the semester. The tone of the cymbals sounds so much better than... Right, this is an awful, terrible sound. Right? So you want to make sure that you're not doing that, that you're muffling it into your gut. So with that in mind, articulation, we want to think about, and if you turn to page 231 in your book, there's an edited crash. It shows crash cymbals, and then it goes to suspended cymbals, which we'll talk about in a later video. But he's got a slightly edited notation that he writes into the music to match what's going on. So a couple of things we want to think about. We talked about this in the introductory chapter. The length of your cymbal notes is really determined by the ensemble. All right. If the ensemble is playing a long note, so should the crash cymbals. If the ensemble is playing a short note, so should the crash cymbals, unless it's specifically written one way or the other. Okay. Typically, and we've talked about this before, contemporary band literature is pretty good with getting the right articulation on cymbal parts now. They're actually, when a composer wants an eighth note, they'll write an eighth note. When they write a quarter note, they'll write a quarter note. And they're pretty good with writing that, okay? But when you play older stuff, when you play anything orchestral or anything that's, say, 50 years old, oftentimes the cymbal parts are not accurately notated. So the example I've used of this is Tchaik 4. You all know da 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 digga 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 digga. Okay, that is what, the last movement? Yeah, beginning of the last movement. All right. So the crash cymbal part for that piece, the very first note is an eighth note, and then the second note is an eighth note. And so the way it's written is this. It's exactly the way it's written. Okay, so that's the notation in the crash cymbal part on Tchaik 4. Now, obviously, da 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 da, those are long notes. Okay, so no cymbal player in their right mind would play a short note. Da 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 da. It doesn't make any sense. And so all of us, when we play that, we hold the note, the whole bar, da 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 off. All right, that's where a good spot with the articulation of the ensemble. And then the last note, or second note we play, is a short note. So what we play is. Okay, so we play a long note at the beginning and then a short note later on. Okay, but even though the music has a short note and a short note, again, it's an old tune, over 100 years old. And so oftentimes older composers didn't write the correct articulation. So even on contemporary literature, you still want to think about what is the ensemble playing, how long should my notes be, and you want to make sure you reflect that. Okay. So on page 231, a couple of things that you'll notice. The very first note, there is a slur. You remember we talked about this in the first chapter. Slur going to nowhere means that it rings indefinitely. Okay, so that very first note, they want it to ring indefinitely. All right, but even though there's a rest on beat 3, they want a longer note than just beat 3. Now by beat 4, or maybe even beat 3, the cymbal isn't ringing quite as loud, so it's obviously gotten softer, but they don't really care about when we cut it off. Obviously we have to play in the second bar, that quarter note, and so you have to stop the sound sometime before there, or maybe not. Maybe you just play, I don't know this particular piece, the cymbal etude, but maybe we do, right? Maybe it's just that. Or maybe we actually want to go, kind of depends on what the ensemble's doing. Does the ensemble have a whole note, and then are they taking a breath before bar 2? Or do they play all the way through there? Okay, is it all slurred? That's something we want to think about. And then if you look on the second line there, beat 2 is not only an eighth note, it's a staccato eighth note. So I want to play that note as short as possible. Okay, and then in bar 2 again, we have another slur going to nothing to let that ring as long as possible. So do you remember the other articulation phrasing or notation that we talked about? The slur going to nowhere, and L, P, L, period, V, period. LV in italics. So both of those mean the same thing. Let vibrate, or just let it ring indefinitely. All right, so both of those mean the same thing. So you want to kind of keep those in mind. Okay. All right, that is all for crash cymbals. I'm going to ask 3 questions. Again, put these in the discussion board when you get a chance. I'll have this up today. Today is Monday. I'll have these up today. All right, question number 1. Name 2 good cymbal companies. Question number 2. What are the 3 size and weight characteristic of crash cymbals? Let's take out the word size. What are the 3 weight characteristics of crash cymbals? What are the 3 weight characteristics of crash cymbals? And then the third question is, the duration of your crash cymbal notes is determined by blank. The duration of your notes is determined by blank. Okay, so those are your 3 questions. So write the answers down in the discussion board, and hopefully, and once you do, you'll see what other people wrote, and we'll talk about it. If we're seeing a lot of people who have some questions about it, then we'll discuss it and make it work. So, all right, this is your crash cymbal lesson. I think that's everything we can talk about crash cymbals, and we'll continue on to bass drum and suspended cymbal next. Thank you very much.